All right, welcome in everybody. If you are here for the resume basics workshop, then you are in the right spot. We are recording today's session, so it should be available on the Costello YouTube page in just a couple of weeks. My name is Madison Hite. I'm the Experiential Learning Manager with the Office of Career Services in the Costello College of Business. And I'm gonna pass it on over to our co-host here. We're very fortunate to have Tyrone Clifton from Stanley Martin Homes here to co-present with us today and give us his amazing insight onto the art of the resume. So
All
please.
right. Thank you, Madison, and hello to everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming out. Again, my name is Tyrone Clifton. Feel free to call me Ty. I am the manager of college and military outreach for Stanley Martin Homes. Stanley Martin Homes is a residential construction company, and our mission is to design and build homes that people love at a price they can afford. I've been here working for this company for about 5 years, and my passion is to help students and veterans get job opportunities in the construction industry at Stanley Martin. I'm a 25-year Army veteran. And then for the last 10 years, I've been doing recruiting and then really working. The last 5 years, I've been working with college students and veterans. So I really enjoy this part of the, learning and being able to, assist both students and veterans get job opportunities. So I'll just plug in where I can and then feel free to ask questions as we go along. All right. Thank you.
Perfect. Alrighty, yeah, I'm gonna get the slides going here and we will jump into the content. Like Ty said, please feel free to ask questions at any time. You can either unmute and ask or put it into the chat, whatever works best for you. So, like I said, today we're gonna be talking about the basics and formatting of crafting the resume. So, this really is going to include how to prepare for your resume, the different resume sections, some formatting tips and tricks, and then putting it all together. So we've got a quick little activity here. We've got kind of a snippet of a sample resume, and I'd like everybody to at least point out one thing on here that you find wrong with this resume. And don't worry if there are aspects of this that looks like your resume. That's why we're here today to help fix it. But I want to see if you guys can point out anything here that you think could be updated to make it a little bit better. LinkedIn URL would be better with just the name. Yeah, we can edit the LinkedIn URL to remove all those extra letters and numbers and stuff, just so it looks a little bit better on the resume. Informal email address. Yeah. So we want to make sure we're using a professional looking email address. So if you're using one that you created in middle school and maybe it's a little silly, it's probably time to change that. I still have my silly middle school address, but that's my spam email for stores and rewards programs and things like that. Different one goes on the resume. Simple wording. Yeah. So if you can see in the bullet points under the grocery store cashier position, we've just got really basic, straightforward language. We're not really elaborating on what that included. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on how we can expand on that. And even in the objective statement too, to get a job where I can gain experience and grow. That's a little vague. So we want to make sure that we're being as specific as possible. Because also if you're using your resume to apply for a job, I think the idea is already that you are looking for a job. So definitely want to err on the more specific side, but we'll get into details a little bit later on. So good work. Alrighty. So it's really important to keep in mind as we're preparing the three rules of resumes. So every resume has a purpose. Everything on your resume should support or reflect that purpose. And we want to order the resume from most relevant to least relevant, keeping with that purpose, right? So think of the resume as like a marketing document, and your audience is the recruiter or the hiring manager for whatever position you're applying for. So if I'm a operations and supply chain management student. And I am applying for an operations position, but I don't mention the word operations anywhere on my resume aside from where I've listed my concentration. That's not going to share a whole lot as to why you're qualified for what you're applying for. So we want everything to match the purpose of your resume as much as possible. And chances are you're using your resume for something, whether that's an internship description, a job description, graduate school application, scholarship application, whatever it might be. You want to tailor the content to whatever it is you're using it for. And then also, when we say order the resume from most relevant to least relevant, we mean moving the sections around that indicate your qualifications, right? So your biggest qualifier to your least qualifier. So for most students, the degree you're currently working on is your biggest qualifier. Now, if it's not, that's fine. Education would move further down on the page, but we want to structure the sections from most relevant to least relevant. So we read top to bottom, left to right. So the most important information should be towards the top of the resume. So let's take a look at a sample resume. So we've got all our different sections here, like contact information, professional summary, education, experience, extracurricular activities, skills. And after we've got those basic sections, we can, if we have more room on the page, we can add on some of these other ones. And it's going to point to exactly where all these sections are in a second. So starting at the top, we've got our contact information, most important thing on the resume, got our professional summary, education, experience, extracurricular activities, and skills. And then we've got some of these other sections. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth on each of these sections in just a moment, but I want you to take a look at the overall general formatting of the resume. And I want you to hopefully notice that it's pretty boring looking, right? There's not a lot of like visual interest, but that's what we want. So we really want to avoid any sort of like fancy Canva templates, no pictures or like little icons of things. We want to keep it as simple as possible, especially for business resumes. Now, if you are a marketing student who is interested in graphic design positions and you're going to an in-person event, that could be an opportunity to demonstrate your skills, but for the most part, this is the format we're looking for. Ty, I'm wondering, because I know you look through a lot of applicants for different types of positions. What generally are you looking for in applicant resumes in terms of like formatting and structure?
Sure. Thank you for connecting with me on this one. Here, as a recruiter, I'm going to look at a couple things. I'm going to see where you live, i.e., the location, Reston, Virginia. So, in other words, like for instance, I just sent Madison a job opportunity that's going to be in Greenbelt, Maryland, right? So, Reston to Greenbelt could be about a 50, 60-minute drive. All right. So if it doesn't quite fit, then it doesn't, I'm going to measure that, right? Because, some people will say, oh, I'll take the job, but then within 60 days they end up quitting because it's the long drive, right? You get stuck on traffic 495. But if my job here is in Reston, then Mary Mason is a great potential candidate for it because it's right here. Then I'm going to look at the education. What's your background? Okay, that makes sense because I might have a marketing or business opportunity there. Great. Then I'm going to look at the professional experience. And when I look at professional experience, I'm going to look at, for my opinion, tenure and career progression. Now, some of you say, well, I'm just a college student, but you've been in the workforce, whether it's been a hospitality job or a retail job. I want to see how long you've stayed at a job and what's been your career progression. So a recruiter worth their salt is going to spend about 15, 20 seconds looking at this resume. Is this a fit? Is it not? Is everything look good, right? Spelling, checking, I'm going to check and make sure the even how it looks and how well it presents. What I share with when I've worked with students in the past is your resume and your cover letter is what gets your foot in the door. You have to do the rest. So your resume, your comments and your accomplishments and your work experience have to be strong, have to use enumeration to be able to tell me how much you can handle, what your capacity to do the work. So those are things that I look at from a quick glance. Looks good. I'm not a fan of the professional summary because, unless it's telling me something that isn't said in the resume, then no problem. But if it's there, great. Relevant coursework, I would put that more at the bottom. But again, if it speaks to the job opportunity, great. And it fits, then I can see the reason for using it, and if it makes sense, then I would say, okay, let's move forward. So taking a great look, and then I'm deciding if I'm going to save your resume or move on. That's how I would look at it, and I'm going to do this within 15-20 seconds.
Yeah, I think that's the key takeaway there is that recruiters don't spend a whole lot of time looking at the resume before being able to make that initial decision. So that's why formatting is so important for ease of reading and grabbing the most important pieces of information quickly. So, although you may want to make it colorful and showcase some of your personality in there, it's just not the time or place. That's what your like LinkedIn cover photo can be. Like you have some flexibility there. The resume we want to make as simple and easy to read as possible. So let's dive a little bit deeper on each of the sections. So for your contact information at the very top of your resume, you want to have your name, of course. It should be the biggest thing on your resume. We're looking at like 14 to 16 point font and probably bolded. We need where you're located. We don't need your exact street address, mostly for just like your privacy reasons if you're going to a career fair, passing out your resume to a gazillion people. Like Ty said, really just need to know generally where you're located and if that makes sense for the job. Now, if you are open to relocating, you can put that there as well. But sometimes in different systems, recruiters are able to filter by like who's in the area. And if you are looking outside the local area, you can leave it off. You can put open to relocating. Or if you are definitely moving somewhere, like you have secured housing, you can make yourself a local. You need your phone number. So make sure you include the area code. We need a professional email address, as we covered. I would not put both your George Mason and your personal email address. I would pick one. And then this is also where your LinkedIn URL profile can go. So make sure that your LinkedIn profile is complete before adding this on here. We want to click on that and go and learn even more about you, not less. So make sure your profile is complete and that you've customized that URL before putting it on your resume.
Just add a little bit, Madison, from a recruiter's perspective. I'm going if I like your resume or I want to reach out, I'm gonna call you, text you, email you at least 2 times. And if I don't hear back from you, I'm moving on. So that's why it's important to have the right phone number, a good email address, right? So that you'll get the email saying, hey, I'd like to request to schedule a phone call. Or when I text you and said, hey, I got your resume, because everybody's looking at their phone, everybody's getting texts. You're going to get a text from the recruiter, and then you want to follow up with them. So that's why that information has to be correct, accurate, and you want to make sure that that it's on there so that if we decide to move forward, we're going to reach out to you that way.
Yes. And whatever email you put on your resume, make sure it's one you're checking. I know that sometimes we put our George Mason emails down, but we don't actually do a whole lot of checking our George Mason inbox. So definitely make sure it's one that you are going to check and read and stay updated on. So here's an example of what that might look like, just isolated from that example. You can see it's all on one line.
Yep.
And you can get this divider between the different sections by just pressing the shift and the backslash key. So now we can move on to the professional summary. Professional summary is a divisive topic. Everybody I've talked to says something different. So you kind of just have to decide for yourself, I think, what makes sense for you. I think it's especially helpful if you are maybe making a career pivot and your background doesn't necessarily align with what you are looking to be doing, or you just need to provide more context for whatever reason, or you don't have a lot of work experience. But it's really just a summary of your qualifications for the position, and kind of just a short bio, but we're not using any sort of personal pronouns. So no I, me, my, etc. It's just really the here's who I am, here's what I want to do, and here's what I'm good at. So you can include both hard and soft skills in this section, and then your skills section can go in a bulleted list directly underneath if you do choose to have this summary. So here's an example. So we've got marketing student offering experience in consumer behavior, marketing trends, and public relations. Adept in Microsoft Office, Google Suite, Salesforce, and Adobe Creative Cloud. Well-versed in marketing strategy with strong analytical skills to evaluate consumer decision making. Excellent communication and conflict management skills. Ability to build rapport quickly, complemented with effective active listening skills. So from this, we've been able to identify a lot of the like, here's what I bring to the table. Something to keep in mind that this should really be no longer than 4 lines of text. So this is on the long end. Nobody's going to read like a half-page paragraph of text on your resume. As we've said, 15 to 20 seconds, maybe shorter. There's no time for that. So make sure you keep it straightforward and to the point.
Wholeheartedly, I'm going to second that motion in the sense that if it gets to be too much, I'm just going to move on from
Yeah.
her perspective.
They're probably just skimming it if it's
Hmm.
any longer than that. So, skills section, we've done right after the professional summary because sometimes they go together. So, if you do have a professional summary, the skills section can just be bulleted directly underneath. But if you don't, then the skills can be its own standalone section. So, here's what that looks like. We've got the skills directly underneath the summary. And here's what it looks like when it's its own standalone section. What a lot of people do is bury their skills at the very bottom of the resume, but you don't have to put it at the bottom. You can move it wherever you think it makes more sense. But something I would note, especially in the skills section, is try to keep it limited to technical skills as it relates to what you're applying for. That's not to say like things like communication and organization and time management are not important because they are. Every employer wants somebody who's good at those things. But those are more of show me skills rather than tell me. So you should be able to demonstrate how you'll use those skills in the bullet points that you'll put under your work experience, volunteer experience, things like that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, this obviously depends on the industry. The skills section is going to look very different for somebody who's interested in a data analyst position than somebody who's interested in an HR benefits position. It's just a different skill set. So it will ultimately depend on the position, your industry, and what you're personally good at. So before we move on to the education section, are there any questions about the sections we've just covered? Contact information, professional summary, and skills. Nope. Love it, Anderson. Straight to the point. Means I'm doing a good job.
No, I was going to say under education, and I've seen this a couple ways, but if you are bilingual or bilingual and you speak another language fluently, I would dare say that should be under education. I know a lot of folks are saying skills,
Oh.
but if you are fluent and able to read, write, speak a language that you've been taught, then highly suggest, put it under education.
Okay, there we go. So that's like definitely something to include if you are bilingual or even trilingual,
Correct.
which is quite an accomplishment. And I would say if it's in the job description as like a, you know, basic qualification or even a preferred qualification, mention it multiple times
All
in
right.
the resume. That way you can make sure that somebody sees that. Because I've seen a lot of positions where, it's a requirement to be bilingual.
Correct.
So that's a big strength. But let's talk about the education section. Remember, I mentioned that for most students, your education that you're currently working on is your biggest qualifier for a position. So that's why we're going to the education section next. So in this section, the basic information that we need is your formal degree title, your concentration, any minors, majors, along with the school name, the location of the school. We need your graduation date, whether that's past or in the future. If it's in the future, we know you have not earned the degree yet. So it's okay if you have not earned it yet. It's just in progress. And then we also don't want the start date for education. We just need the end date. We want to know when you're done, when can you start working. And then some optional things to include in the education section are your GPA. Our office's general rule of thumb is if it's over 3.0 or higher, go ahead and throw it on there. If it's not, just go ahead and leave it off. And if it's over 3.5, I would bold it. This is also where you can include any honors or awards. So if you've made Dean's List, President's List, things like that, that can absolutely go here. And then with relevant coursework, you kind of have two options. The first would be to add it as a list in the education section, or you can turn relevant coursework into its own section and elaborate on some of your classes. So here's what that looks like. So you can see we've got the degree, expected graduation date, school name and location, and the GPA. So that's at the minimum kind of the information we want in this section. Hopefully you can see my mouse moving, but if you didn't want to make relevant coursework its own section, just right underneath George Mason University, I would just put relevant coursework and then list a couple. I've seen some people list like every class they've taken. Don't do
No.
that. Um, Remember, we said everything on the resume should support the purpose of what we're using the resume for. Pick the most relevant classes to include. And if you are making relevant coursework its own section, which is, I'd say, especially helpful if you truly have like little to no work experience, like you've had one job here or there, or you haven't had any, pick like 1 to 2 courses, do the course name when you took it, and then just a couple of bullet points highlighting what you accomplished in the class. We don't want a summary of what the class is about. We don't care. We want to know what can you do as a result of taking the class. So we'll talk about how to write bullet points briefly in just a little bit, and that applies to our education, the relevant coursework as well. So any questions about the education section before we talk about experience?
Let me just say, some folks are transfers from community colleges, and that's fine if you want to put that on there, especially if, so it could be if you got an associate's degree and or, from this time, from 2020 something to 2020, you attended community college, and that's fine. No need to put high school. We already know, if you're in college, we already know that you graduated high school, so no need to put that information in there. But community colleges and or extra courses that you have taken a certification in Microsoft something or advanced Excel, got a certificate, feel free to put that there if it's your education.
Yeah, absolutely to all of that. If you earned an associate's degree, you can put that there. Any higher education degree you've
Right.
earned can go in this education section. Like Ty said, once you start at a higher education institution, you have to have finished high school. So you can go ahead and take off your high school
High school.
diploma. The priority is always going to be your highest earned degree. And of course, yes, any certifications can absolutely go in the education section. So let's talk about the word experience. So in the experience part of the resume, that's a really broad umbrella term. that we're able to kind of break up into different sections. So even if you don't have any like paid work experience, it doesn't mean that you don't have any experience at all, right? So experience can also mean things like internships, volunteer work, on-campus involvement or leadership positions, semester-long heavy course projects that you worked on, job simulations that you can complete via Forage, externships, micro internships with Parker Dewey, and any certifications as well. This all counts towards things that you can include on your resume. So even if you are somebody that doesn't have any work experience, you can still have a very robust resume by including and working on some of these other things. So, what I might do is like break these up into different sections. So, under the experience umbrella, if I do everything in one section, I'm required to put it all in reverse chronological order. And then I don't have a lot of agency over the way I order that on the page, right? So, let's say I did an internship last summer. I'm an accounting student. I did an accounting internship last summer, but then I went back to my retail job during the school year. In reverse chronological order, that's gonna come first. That retail job is gonna be on top of my accounting internship. And let's say I really want the focus to be on that internship experience. I might pull out that internship experience and put it in its own section called internship experience. And that's going to go on top of my work experience section. That way I have more agency over where it goes on the page. And in that 15 to 20-second scan, the eye's going to hit that accounting intern position first. So hopefully that makes sense in that by breaking things out into their own sections, you can move them around in a way on the page that makes a little bit more sense. And again, helps you order things in terms of relevance. When we're listing out the different experiences, we need some minimum pieces of information, just like the other sections. We need your position title, whether that's your job title or if it's just volunteer or whatever it is, we need some sort of position title. We need the dates that you worked in this position. So we do want start date to end date. If you're currently in the position, we say present instead of current or now. We also need the name of the employer or organization, where that's located, and then we've got our bullet points. So here's an example of what that would look like. And before I briefly jump into how to write these bullet points, what's something you notice about the bullet points here in this example, as maybe opposed to the ones we looked at the beginning of the workshop? More descriptive. Yeah. Anything else we notice? They show that this person made an impact. Yeah. So impact is important. So for every bullet point, we really want to go beyond stating job duties. Job duties are things that are only applicable to that specific job and aren't going to help somebody reading the resume understand how it fits into the position that you've applied for. So for each bullet point, we want to start with an action verb that helps you take ownership of over your accomplishments. I see a lot of students like to use a lot of passive language like, oh, responsible for X or helped with Y or whatever it is. Take more ownership over your accomplishments because you did it. So just say you did it. So we've got our strong action verb. And then we not only want to identify what you did, which is the job duty, but how. So what skills, tools, processes were used to accomplish that thing? And then what was the result? So Layla said they show that this person made an impact. We want to know what the result was. So how did it impact the team, client, company, project, whatever it was? We want to know why is what you did important? And I don't know if what else you noticed here is that there's a lot of numbers being used in these bullet points. We're adding quantifiers. This helps provide more context and scale to your accomplishment. It's way more impactful to say, uh, ensures workplace safety resulting in 100% compliance with zero accidents reported than if I just said to ensure workplace safety. So by including the numbers, it helps show how much you did. So I want you to think about like how often you did something, how many of something you did, how many people did you manage, how much money were you in charge of. Reflect on and think about things like that. And it's okay to estimate too. So if you need to say like 25 plus, that's fine. Or over 100 or whatever it is, you can estimate.
Wholeheartedly agree with you, Madison. Enumeration, right? So numbers, percentages, dollars, right? Tells a story better than if you don't use it. And that allows for the recruiter and a hiring manager to understand your capacity. That person has been able to train 100 people. If you kind of looking at those comments there, to me, those are strong bullets, and that's where I would be like, okay, we need to reach out to this person because they have the capacity, they have the experience. You could tell from that resume has been there since 2021. So that to me has great tenure, great work experience, and then they've been effective in what they're doing. So those are big plus on the numbers.
This slide kind of goes over what I just said, but when you do get access to the slides, you'll be able to access this list of verbs that you can use, which will help you from using the same one over and over again. I definitely fall into that trap sometimes, so make sure you're diversifying so that they sound different. Here's an example of how you might change a job duty into an accomplishment statement. So instead of saying waited on tables and served food, we might say utilize strong communication skills, excellent order recall, and multitasking while serving 300 plus people a day, achieving a 99% guest satisfaction score. That tells us so much more about the accomplishment than the job duty statement does. So, some quick formatting things to think about and take care of are that we want our dates to align down the right side of the page, which helps save you some space a little bit. As we looked at in the education example, your GPA can go underneath your graduation date. With the way the resume works, we do end up with most of the text on the left side of the page. So think about ways that you can utilize the right side of the page with things like date or moving locations over there or something like that. If you are really tight on space, you can list the job title, company, location, and the dates all on one line if you really needed to. Something I would do with your margins. So in Word, if you go to layout margins and then click narrow, that's going to give you a lot more room on the page because we do want this to fit on one page. I would say, generally speaking, for most students, you should have a one-page resume right now. Of course, that's not the case for everybody. But until you have like 5 to 7 years of like relevant industry experience, you should have one page. At that point, you can probably go to 2 pages, and then at that point, it should be 2 full pages. We want to avoid like any sort of half page or page and a half situation. So make sure you have enough content to get to 2 full pages.
And I would share with you for those adult learners or those folks who are going back to school and still working a full-time job, we don't care about what happened beyond 10 years. Do not, you know what I mean? Even if you're at the same job for 10 years, okay, great. Right? But 10 years ago is behind you, and we were looking at the most relevant. So kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, at a certain point, you kind of just have to like get choosy about what you're going to include. On my resume, I don't have the bookstore job I worked in college because it's just not relevant. Is it on
Okay.
my LinkedIn? Yeah, but I don't need to waste space on my resume to include that job. Awesome. So, another little activity for you guys here, and we can move through this fairly quickly, I think. But I want you to think about one of your experiences that you've had. So, that could be a job, class project, volunteer, leadership position. And I want you to share what that position was and a couple of skills or strengths that you gained from it. So go ahead and type those in the chat. And I can go first if that helps. I'd say in my positions, so three skills that I've gained or used are public speaking, relationship building, and advising.
think somewhere along the way you can speak about customer service,
Mm.
right? Somewhere along the way you could speak about leadership, strong communications skills, teamwork, all those things that you're probably doing indirectly. If you've played sports, you maybe been a leader on a sports team, or you're in a fraternity, sorority, or in an organization, nonprofit. What's your role? Whether you're an active member, you might be a vice president or president of the club. Make sure those are leadership experiences that you're gaining. If you're managing money, or like treasury, those kind of things, think about that, right? Managing um, finances, those things are soft skills that could be added on there. Thank you. Mhm.
Awesome. We've got a couple in here.
Yep.
So Siho's a lead consultant at Mason Consulting Group, and he's used communication, strategic and critical thinking, leadership, and teamwork skills. Awesome. Layla's a general manager, learned how to train staff, assign roles, keep track of sales, being trustworthy, building relationships with other coworkers and managers and bosses. Awesome. So these are great things to include in the bullet points of each of these positions. So hopefully that gives you a good starting point. And there's some examples. So I want to make sure everybody keeps in mind that there's no perfect resume. So don't try and find like the perfect template or anything like on Canva or even on Word. I would just type directly onto a plain text Word document. We want to keep it simple. It's a living document, so make sure you're updating your resume pretty consistently. Something that maybe people won't tell you is that you should update it even if you're currently working in a job, because let's say you end up, leaving that position or you start to look for other things or you need your resume for something, it's going to get to the point where you're like, what have I done the last 3 years? Like, you want to make sure that you are updating it because a lot can happen in that amount of time, especially if you're used to like shorter term internships and then suddenly you have, several years in one position. Keep your language and formatting concise and to the point. Again, 15 to 20 seconds of time. We want to make it as easy as possible to read. Make sure we have our quantifiers. And what some people will do is create a master resume with all their experience and information. And this can be as many pages as you need it to be. And then when it comes time to apply for something, you can just copy and paste over the most important and relevant pieces of information. Something else people will do is if you are interested in multiple industry areas. So let's say I'm interested in exploring positions in social media, but also human resources, but also sales. I'm probably going to have a separate resume for each of those industries so that it's less like full-on tailoring and rewriting that I have to do every time I want to apply for a job. It's like, okay, this is more of an HR position. I'm going to use my HR focused resume and tailor this one to the specific job description. That will make it easier on you every single time. So please make sure that you are checking for grammatical, spelling, and typing errors, especially if you have attention to detail as one of the skills on your resume, because that's going to be a surefire way to show that you actually don't have that skill. Have somebody critique it, ideally somebody from my team over in the Office of Career Services, but if not, then at the minimum, like a family member, a friend, a teacher, a professor, whoever can get some eyes on it. Name the file name something appropriate. Uh, People can see it. So, uh, I'd say at the minimum, just like your first and last name. But what I always did was include the company name, or in my case, the school that I was applying to, so that I knew I was submitting the right copy of my resume to the right job. But it's important to keep in mind that the resume is really just like the first step in the job search process, and it cannot get you the job, but it can get you an interview, which can get you the job. So the resume is just one part of the job search process, and you also want to keep in mind things like networking, cover letters, interview prep, and salary negotiation. A great resume can open doors, but a poor one can close them. Because even if you aren't right for one job, you may be right for another one. And if you had a good resume, recruiter's probably going to remember you and like keep that on file versus like, oh, this person had a really awful resume. Like, I'm not even going to consider them, for anything else. So keep that in mind too.
For sure, definitely. Uh, this is a great statement because I always tell students and veterans that a resume and a cover letter will only get your foot in the door. You have to do the rest, right? So if your resume is clean and accurate and concise enough that is attractive to the recruiter, to the hiring manager, has those buzzwords in there that we're looking for, then we're going to schedule, we're going to reach out to you, call, text, email at least two times, and then schedule a time to have a phone screen followed by a phone interview.
If you want to compare your resume to a job description that you're applying for, you can request access to Costello Career AI. This will analyze the job description and your resume and tell you which areas you've matched the job description, but also areas that you can improve in and provide you suggestions and assistance to help include the information you need to match the job description a little bit better. So highly recommend. There's also some self-introduction and interview prep features in here that are helpful as well. So you can scan the QR code quickly now to request access, but you'll also get the slides later. Awesome. So that's all the content we had resume-wise. I want to make sure we leave a little bit of time here in case anybody has any questions for Ty about resumes or what it's like to work at Stanley Martin or opportunities available. So I'll slide through the rest of our slides here. We've got our LinkedIn networking groups that you can join. And we've got our social media pages as well, where you can stay updated on any other upcoming employer events. Awesome. So now I want to open the floor for any questions anybody might have. Now is the time to ask. And yeah, the floor is yours.
We post our jobs all the time. And you talk to Madison, we probably send it to a list of jobs every 2 weeks of here are the
Yeah.
opportunities for college students and for veterans. And we've been successful at hiring George Mason University students, both capacities, right? For veterans and for college students for our positions. One thing that I was just kind of looking over, I'm not sure how many of you guys follow the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out job reports every month, right? And the categories of the industries like construction, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, and retail, right? Those are the industry overall. And this is where they're hiring and where they're not hiring. So that's something to pay attention to as you're deciding, developing, hey, what industry do I want to work in? Yep, your career field might be marketing or business or IT, but those are the career fields. But within those industry are those career fields that you might want to say, okay, let me look a little deeper because who's hiring? Healthcare is always hiring. Not everybody has to be a doctor or a nurse or, anesthesiologist because they need corporate people to make sure that they get paid, that they do the forecasting, analyzing the trends, all that kind of stuff. Construction, everybody needs a place to live, everybody has a place to work, all those. So those are industries that continue to do well, but regardless of what's going on in the market. Right? We're always going to need a place to live, so they're always going to build all those things. Some things get influenced by what's going on. Private sector does get influenced when we're all suffering through gas price increase right now, right? That's an area that is being influenced by what's going on around the world. So that might impact travel, that might impact whether companies are going to hire or not. So something to consider is to review the monthly Bureau of Labor Statistics, see where things are, and then decide what career fields you want to work in. Stanley Martin's a great company. We're a growing company. We're in from Maryland all the way down to Florida, 16 division offices. Our corporate office is right here in Reston. Madison and I have worked very hard to ensure that GMU get first pick of job opportunities.
Oh
So
yeah.
the team there really is really, if you have questions about your resume or your questions about preparing for interviews, reach out to the Office of Career Services because they do a great job. And they will coach you up. And if you listen to them, I'm confident that you'll do very well on your in your interview. So that's what I would share with you guys. Again, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want, and we'll leave it open and if you guys have some questions.
Yeah, that just made me think of a question that I was going to ask you. And it's funny that you mentioned the industry kind of versus job function thing because Wall Street Journal actually just released a report about the top companies in various areas about
Mhm.
like career growth, career stability for early professionals. And one of the things it mentioned was like the best opportunities for your chosen career, like job function, is might be outside of the industry that you want to work in. So like Stanley Martin, it's not you're not the only positions available are not the people who are physically building the home. So you don't need to be somebody who's good with power tools and can build a house. Like there's other
Right.
positions. So what positions do you feel like you typically hire for like early career professionals?
Sure. So for us, and I'll share with you, a lot of people think, oh, that's construction. That means I'll be, for our position, our job, we are a construction management company. So I tell people we don't swing the hammers, we manage the hammer swingers. In other words, we will hire sub vendors to put in the roof, put in the drywall, put in the driveway, put in all the things that you need to make a house. And we're going to manage that process so that we know that our houses are being built in a timely manner and report up. So think about like project management, right? So for our position, it's going to be the assistant neighborhood construction manager, the assistant neighborhood sales manager. Those are going to be in the divisions, those land acquisition, land development, land entitlement, sales, and then construction. At the corporate office, which is here in Reston, we're going to have those accounting, finance, marketing, IT, legal, right? And that's going to be those are the folks that are supporting the folks in the divisions, but also doing that big forecast. I'll share with you, like for instance, last year we built and sold 6,000 homes. This year, our forecast is to build and sell 7,000 homes. In the next 3 years, we plan to build and sell 10,000 homes annually. That takes a lot of research, forecasting, predicting, looking at the demographics of the area, who's building, what job opportunities are going to be there to support the home, the building of the homes and communities, all those kind of things. So there's a lot that goes into it. And we need those folks just, the same way at the corporate as is what we do folks in the field.
Awesome. All right, anybody, any questions for Ty before we go ahead and wrap it up today? What is it like working at Stanley Martin Homes and what is its main mission?
All right. Our mission statement is to design and build homes that people love at a price they can afford. What is it like working at Stanley Martin? I always say that one person can't build a house, it takes a team, right? So we need that team in the construction side, the land acquisition, the land development, the land entitlement, the sales aspect. That's the team that helps us build a house. So if you're a team player, if you're, more of the hey, I can be a team player and a team leader and project management, leadership, those kind of things. That's what we're looking for. I've had some of our leaders say, we don't, we're not looking for you to have construction experience. We're looking for you to have the right attitude, to be proactive, to be that, mission focused, get things done. And we'll teach you the Stanley Martin way. That's how we position it. You don't have to have a background. You don't have to, oh, I don't know how to put in a plug or put in, paint or whatever like that. Don't worry about it. We'll teach you how to do all that, and then you'll learn from the sub vendors on how we make things happen.
What would be a good way to show a willing to learn mindset on the resume? Interesting question.
That's an interesting, those proactive, those not passive words, those proactive words that Madison mentioned earlier. You know what I mean? When you're saying provided, achieved, attained, those kind of things, those buzzwords that are going to help support what you're doing. Led, managed, right? Operated. Those start words, you know what I mean, that will help you say, okay, this person knows how to, and again, enumeration, right? If I can understand that provided excellent customer service to 100 customers a day at the restaurant, okay, they understand sales, they understand customer service, they understand hospitality. Those are the things that we're looking for.
Yeah, I would also say like anytime you can kind of demonstrate that from past positions, like did you do something kind of outside of your normal job description? Did you take initiative somewhere else? Anywhere you can showcase that, I think would demonstrate a willingness to learn. Alrighty, I think we have time for one last question if anybody has one, but otherwise I will go ahead and just wrap it up now in the interest of time, but we'll stay on for just a minute here at the end in case there's any other questions. But thank you so much for attending today's Resume Basics workshop. And another huge thank you to Ty Clifton from Stanley Martin Holmes for providing your wonderful and helpful insight today.
Very welcome. And again, reach out to me at any time. Madison knows how to reach out to me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to help you guys. Thank you so much for putting this together, Madison. And for inviting me.
Of course. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.